What is going on, guys? Max Settings here, and welcome back to another review. In today's review, we are going to be taking a look at the iBasso DX300 portable player. Now, before we get into today's review, just a big shout out to Bloom Audio for providing this DX300 for review. Bloom Audio is an online audio retailer that carries many different brands. And he's also very much so into cryptocurrency, so for any of you that have recently, hit a little bit of a boom in the cryptocurrency craze, you can purchase stuff from him using various different cryptos. So once again, big thanks to him for providing this DX300 for review. It will be returned to him after the conclusion of this video. But without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into the review. So the DX300 is iBasso's current flagship portable player. Now, I've had two different iBasso DX160s, which is one of their mid-range models. I've had the 2019 and the 2020 version. We have the 2020 sitting right here. The reason I never reviewed this is this thing is pretty janky, which I'll talk about a little bit in this and kind of explain why I never reviewed the 160. But here we are with the 300. So this thing is quite loaded, as we will talk about today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get specs out of the way, and there are a lot of specs, so kind of hold on. I will admit this is going to be a little bit boring. So the DX300 is coming in at $1,250. It is using a 2340 by 1080p 6.5-inch IPS display. It is using a Snapdragon 630 CPU with 6 gigs of LPDDR4X RAM, 128 gigabytes of storage, 2 batteries, one 4,000 milliamp hour and one 2,000 milliamp hour. We'll talk about why it has 2 batteries in a little bit. It weighs 300 grams, and then for power output through the 4.4 or the 2.5 millimeter balanced output, you get 1.2 watts at 32 ohms and 168 milliwatts at 300 ohms, output impedance of 0.139 ohms. And through the single-ended output, you get 350 milliwatts at 32 ohms and 34 milliwatts at 300 ohms with a 0.43 ohm output impedance. You also get Bluetooth 5.0 with all the fancy Bluetooth codecs, aptX, LDAC, all that fun stuff. Full MQA decoding, as well as all the other file formats, DSD, FLAC, all that. And I believe that is about it for the specs on the DX300. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a little overview of the DX300. So the first thing is this thing is large. This thing to me feels, I think, very slightly larger than like an iPhone 12 Pro Max, but then just really fat. This thing is chunky. Now, it feels really nice. Like, this feels like a flagship smartphone. And when we flip on the screen, this thing has a really nice screen-to-body ratio. This is actually better than like most Android smartphones currently on the market. Which is kind of funny because here we are with a portable player that feels better and looks better than most Android smartphones, at least in my opinion. So it looks and feels incredibly solid and sturdy in the hand. So let's go ahead and do the exterior tour of the unit, and then we'll hop on into the software side. So on the top, you have your USB-C charging port as well as a coaxial out. You can, feed this into a DAC through a coaxial output into the input. And I guess you can also OTG out of the USB-C into a DAC as well. On the side, you have your volume wheel. That is also your lock-unlock button. You have you have next track, play, and last track. One little, criticism for this. I didn't see a software setting for it. There might be, but if it's paused and you hit next track, it flips the track, but it doesn't play. I personally think that if it's paused, you hit next track, it should then just immediately play instead of having you to also hit unpause. Just a little gripe from me. Now, on the bottom, you have your amp section. Now, iBasso says that the amp module will be switchable. You can see there's 2 screws here for you to pull this out. They currently don't make any other amp modules for this, but in the future, if they happen to come out with one, you can buy an upgraded module and swap it out. But here you have, I guess, all the connectors you would usually want on a portable player. 3.5mm out, 2.5mm balanced out, and 4.4mm balanced out. On the side, you have a single micro SD card slot, and that would probably be my second criticism of this unit, is I feel like for $1250, you really probably should have dual slots. It's not as big a deal nowadays because we do now have terabyte micro SD card slots, but at the price, I still would like to see dual SD slots. Okay, now that we've finished wrestling with the SD card, I believe that is about it for the exterior tour of the unit. It has like a kind of a cool, kind of soft touch glass back. It does include a silicone case that I'm just not using right now, and it has a screen protector currently installed on it. It comes with, I believe, 2 screen protectors in the box. So let's go ahead and hop into the software side. So this is iBasso's Mango player, and it's pretty full featured, has quite a lot of stuff that I won't get too into. It has a pretty robust equalizer and a few other things. So it's a fairly decent player all in all. You can see all your music here, and as well as your albums and artists and everything. So yeah, it's a pretty nice music player. If there's other ones you like, you also can install APKs. So yeah, you can see the album art, and you can recycle through tracks, as you can see. And when you lock it, it also puts the album art on the lock screen. So that is pretty nice, and it's very, very responsive. And just here you have Chrome and a few other things. No Play Store on this, I guess, without, rooting it and doing some third-party software. But it does have an APK store, so you can install a lot of third-party apps that way. So you also have 3 gain settings and 5 or 6 different filter settings on this, and yeah, it's all very, very nice, very, very responsive. Now, the reason why this whole thing is so responsive, I guess let me go ahead and pull up the 160 here with the same Mango player. If I go through here and I start scrolling, I mean, it's fairly responsive, but it does, start to lag up a little bit. You can kind of see there. It's a little slower scrolling through everything. Now, the thing about the DX300 that's so great is the specs. Even most above $1,000 players have really poor specs. They use very, very low-end CPUs, which is kind of what this is. This is like a smartwatch tier CPU. And even a lot of really expensive players use very low-end CPUs. Now, this, on the other hand, is using a Snapdragon 630, which is a last generation mid-tier Android CPU. I think that's what the Pixel 3a and a few other $5-ish $100 Android phones use. So it's still a very modern, very capable CPU that's running, legitimate Android phones like the Pixel 3a or 4a, and I think some of the lower end Samsung phones. So it's very, very competent in those regards. And then we're running a very stripped version of Android, so not even all the normal stuff that a 630 would have to deal with on a real phone. And then combine that with 6 gigs of RAM, and all of a sudden, this thing is incredibly responsive because, like I said, it's running a real Android smartphone CPU with a lot of RAM. So this gives you a really, really responsive experience, which is so nice. Even other expensive players that I've used at shows have not been this responsive. This is the most responsive player that I have ever used, and it makes the whole experience really, really nice. So I really like the entire user interface of this player, and those specs are great. Okay, so now how does this player sound? So I've really not tested really many players at all at home. The only ones that I've had at home are the 160 here. I've had a FIO M6 at one point, but unfortunately I'm not going to be able to compare this to the Astel and Kern, whatever, or the FIO M15. So I'm just going to let you know what I think this sounds like in general. So this is using Cirrus Logic DAC and it does have some of that Cirrus Logic quality. It's a little bit bright leaning. It's not overly bright. The DX160 was a little bit on the brighter side. It's a lot more detailed than the DX160 was, with a lot more power. It's a lot cleaner than the DX160 as well, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So the DX300 is a little bit on the leaner, bright end side, but not offensively so in any means. It is really detailed overall. Overall layering is a little bit, it's lacking just a little bit, but that is honestly been the case of a lot of portable sources that I've used. I also find that transients are slightly dulled compared to desktop sources, but all in all, it is really a good sounding unit. I really don't have too many complaints about it. I've used it with quite a few headphones and IMs, and I think it sounds really nice overall. On the go or for like a show or something, if you just want to have a pretty solid music experience overall, I don't think you will have too many complaints about it. It's really full featured all in all, and I think it sounds really good overall. Just a little bit on the leaner, like I said, bright analytical side, but not offensively so in any way. Fairly detailed all in all. Decent separation, but a little bit smeared to me. But like I said, for a portable source, I think it's really good sounding portable source. Now, a few more things I want to touch on real quick after the sound section. So I mentioned it had 2 batteries. And the reason for that is it has a separate battery for the digital section, so obviously the screen and the CPU, RAM, and all that stuff. And then the amplifier has its own battery section. And in the top right corner, you can see it says A and D, and it gives a percentage. So that's analog and digital. So the analog is the amp section, and the digital is the digital sector. D is the digital section. And supposedly, the reasons for that is, I guess, it reduces the noise floor. So they claim it makes it cleaner. So all in all, it does work. I did try it with the Andromeda. There is like the ever so slightest hiss. If you're sitting in like a perfectly dead quiet room or an anechoic chamber, you'll notice it. But if you're in any room that has any AC, PC fan, like even the slightest bit of background noise, you're not going to notice it. So to me, it does get Andromeda approved source in my book, where, like I said, the DX160 definitely did not. And then just real quick to touch on why I never reviewed the 160, this thing is really janky. Both of them that I've had, they just randomly shut off, and they will not turn back on unless you plug them into a computer, open like this software, reset the firmware, and then they turn back on. Both the 2019 and the 2020 I've had both did that, and yeah, they're really janky. I think it sounds pretty good for its price, but they're janky. Where this, on the other hand, feels super polished and really good. It's not the slow, kind of buggy, unresponsive thing that the 160 was. So all in all, I really like the DX300, and it absolutely gets my recommendation for a player. It's really responsive. I think it sounds really nice, has great features across the board, really low noise floor, good power, and it is a great unit all in all. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed my review of the iBasso DX300. Once again, big thanks to Bloom Audio for providing this for review. I will link his store in the description below, as well as my Twitter, my contact email, and all other relevant information. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the review. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.